Welcome to a new deep dive. Today we're plunging into, well, a truly vast and captivating topic, the incredible animal, plant, and marine diversity of India.
And not just the diversity, but the intricate, often fragile web of life that sustains it all.
Exactly. Our mission, as always, is to take the sources you've shared with us, sort of distill the most important insights, and give you a clear path to becoming really well-informed about this rich biodiversity, without getting lost in all the details. And to set the stage, here's a fact that might catch you off guard. A 2011 study. Researchers from Harvard, Princeton, Adelaide, University of Singapore, they ranked India as the 7th most environmentally hazardous country in the world.
7th. Out of 179 nations evaluated.
Right. Brazil was worst, Singapore was best, but 7th. That figure really underscores the paradox we're exploring, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. A nation brimming with unique natural wonders, yet facing these immense environmental pressures. And what's compelling, I think, is how this deep dive will show that the threats aren't abstract. They're linked to specific habitats, human activities, even tiny parasites.
Parasites. Okay, interesting.
But we'll also uncover some of nature's pretty remarkable adaptations and resilience along the way.
Great. So let's start by unpacking some of India's critically endangered mammals. It's quite a roster of unique creatures facing immense pressure, often because of very specific needs.
Let's start with the pygmy hog, a truly remarkable animal, weighing only about, 8 kilograms?
8 kilograms, that's tiny.
It is. It's the world's smallest wild pig. And they build these unique nests all year round. Crucially, they serve as indicator species.
Indicator species.
Their health reflects the health of their whole habitat, in this case, the tall terre grasslands.
Ah, okay.
And why that's important is because these grasslands are vital lifelines for other big-name endangered species. Think Indian rhinoceros, swamp deer.
Oh, wow. So the little hog tells us about the big guys, too.
Exactly. And the Bengal florican as well. There is some good news, though. A captive breeding program started in Assam back in '96.
Has it worked?
Yes, they've had success with reintroducing some hogs back into the wild.
That's good to hear. But here's where it gets really interesting. Like you mentioned, parasites. The pygmy hog has its own critically endangered parasite.
It does. The pygmy hog-sucking louse.
Seriously? A specific louse?
Yes, and its survival is entirely tied to its host. It's a powerful symbol of just how interconnected these ecosystems are.
That's incredible. So if the hog goes...
The louse goes too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And despite the breeding programs, the hog still faces those familiar threats. Loss and degradation of the grasslands.
Right.
Dry season burning, livestock grazing, afforestation planting forests where grasslands should be, and of course hunting.
It's always a complex mix of factors, isn't it?
It really is. And this theme of habitat specificity, needing just the right place, continues with several critically endangered rodents endemic to India.
Like which ones?
Well, take the Andaman and Nicobar shrews. You've got the Andaman white-toothed, Jenkins Andaman spiny, the Nicobar whitetail.
Found only there.
Found nowhere else on Earth.
Yeah.
They're nocturnal, eat very specific spots like leaf litter, rock crevices.
On their specific islands, presumably? South Andaman, Greater Nicobar?
Precisely. Their survival is precarious.
Yeah.
Threats include selective logging, which destroys that specific habitat.
And natural disasters must hit islands hard.
Exactly. Tsunamis, drastic weather changes. They're incredibly vulnerable.
And other rodents, too.
Yes, the Kondana rat. It's nocturnal, burrows, and exists only on one small plateau, the Sinagar Plateau near Pune.
Just one plateau. Wow.
And similarly, the large rock rat, or Elvira rat, nocturnal, burrowing, found only in the eastern Ghats of Tamil Nadu.
So their extreme localization is their biggest weakness.
Pretty much. It makes them incredibly vulnerable to any habitat loss, overgrazing, disturbance from tourism, forest conversion, even just people collecting fuel wood.
It really makes you realize just how easily a species can be pushed to the brink when its entire existence hangs on one small, undisturbed area.
Absolutely. We see this pattern again with the Namdapha flying squirrel. It's unique in its genus.
Meaning it's the only one of its kind.
Yes. And it's restricted to a single valley in Arunachal Pradesh. And sadly, it's also hunted for food.
Oh, dear. And what about the Malabar civet? I've heard that's incredibly rare.
Considered one of the world's rarest mammals, yes. Endemic to India, found exclusively in the western Ghats.
Nocturnal as well.
Yes. And its biggest threats are, again, deforestation and the spread of commercial plantations eating into its habitat.
It's a recurring theme. Deforestation, habitat loss.
It is. And historically, India was also home to rhinos we no longer see there. The Sumatran rhinoceros, and the Javan
They
rhinoceros.
used to live in India.
They did, but both are now believed to be regionally extinct in the country. It's a stark illustration of how quickly things can change if pressures aren't managed.
That's sobering. Let's also consider the Kashmir stag, the Hengal. That's the state animal of Jammu and Kashmir, right?
Correct. A subspecies of red deer. It lives in dense, riverine forests, high valleys. Beautiful animal.
And the threats, let me guess.
Habitat destruction, overgrazing by domestic livestock competing for food, and, yes, poaching. It mirrors many of the challenges we've already discussed.
It seems like a tough situation for so many mammals.
It is. And, when we talk about mammals, it's worth just a brief global aside on how diverse reproduction can be. Most mammals have live birth, placentas.
Right, like us.
Exactly. But then you have these fascinating exceptions. Think about monotremes.
Egg-laying mammals.
Precisely. The duck-billed platypus, the echidnas, only found in Australia and New Guinea. The echidna even has a pouch, sort of, and the male platypus is venomous.
Wow. Okay, definitely different.
And then you have the marsupials, kangaroos, wallabies, Tasmanian devils.
The pouched mammals.
Right. They have really short gestation periods, give birth to incredibly tiny, underdeveloped young.
Which then crawl into the pouch to finish developing.
Exactly. It just highlights the sheer range of biological strategies out there, including the many unique ones we find right here in India.
Right. Okay, good context. And speaking of unique mammals, let's shift focus now to India's waters. Marine mammals.
Okay. The freshwater or river dolphins are a prime example. They're actually split into two types, the Ganges and the Indus River dolphins.
And the Ganges one is special in India.
It is. It's recognized as India's national aquatic animal. You find them in the big river systems, Ganges, Brahmaputra, Meghna across India, Bangladesh, Nepal.
Fascinating. And there are other marine mammals too, aren't there? Herbivores.
Yes, like the dugong, also called the sea cow.
Sea cow, right. I've heard of them. Are they doing okay?
They're classified as vulnerable. They face threats from hunting for meat and oil habitat degradation, especially seagrass beds, which they eat.
Ah, their food sources disappearance.
Yes, that's a major factor. And also getting accidentally caught in fishing gear.
Where would you find them in India?
In nearshore waters. Places like the Gulf of Mannar, down south, the Gulf of Kutch in the west, and around the Andaman and Nicobar Islands.
Okay. And manatees are related, but not in India, right?
Correct. Manatees are found more in the Americas and Africa. Similar niche, but different locations.
Got it. Okay, let's turn our attention skyward now. Critically endangered birds in India. What are some key stories here?
Well, the stories often involve rediscovery, which is quite exciting, but also that constant fight against habitat loss.
Like the Jordan's courser. I read that was thought to be extinct.
For decades, yes.
Yeah.
A nocturnal bird hadn't been seen, then rediscovered in 1986.
Wow. What happened then?
That rediscovery was so significant it actually led to the creation of the Sri Lanka Maliswara Wildlife Sanctuary, specifically to protect its habitat.
What kind of habitat does it need?
Very specific. Undisturbed scrub jungle with open areas. But even with the sanctuary, it faces threats from land clearing, for farming, illegal trapping, even quarrying nearby.
It's never simple, is it?
Rarely. Another remarkable tale is the forest owlet.
Lost for even longer, wasn't it?
Over a century. Rediscovered in 1997, it lives in dry, deciduous forests.
And the threats are logging.
Primarily logging and tree cutting, yes. It destroys the places where they roost and nest. Trees with cavities are crucial for them.
And what about birds like the white-bellied heron or the Bengal florican?
The white-bellied heron is extremely rare, one of the rarest herons in the world. The Bengal florican is known for its unique mating display, this jumping dance the males do.
A dancing bird, but facing problems.
Both face severe population declines, again, tied mainly to the loss and degradation of their specific wetland and grassland habitats.
It sounds like a pattern. What about birds that might actually be extinct in India, like the Himalayan quail?
The Himalayan quail and the pink-headed duck. Yeah, both are really concerning. They haven't been conclusively recorded in India for many, many decades.
So possibly extinct, or just incredibly hard to find.
It's hard to say for sure without definitive proof, but they are presumed extinct by many. Their disappearance highlights how difficult it is to track elusive species, especially with historical hunting pressures and the rapid loss of their wetland habitats.
A silent loss, perhaps?
Potentially. Then you have migrants facing issues. The sociable lapwing winters in India, its population has crashed rapidly.
Why?
Conversion of its steppe habitat for agriculture outside India, plus threats along its migration routes, and the spoon-billed sandpiper, an amazing bird with that unique beak.
Yes.
India hosts some of its last crucial wintering grounds. It's critically endangered. Huge declines. Needs very specific coastal mudflats.
So protecting wintering grounds here is globally important for them.
Absolutely essential. Their plight really underscores how interconnected conservation is across borders.
And finally, for birds, the Siberian crane. Such a majestic bird.
Truly.
Yeah.
Large, white, migratory. They used to winter regularly at Keeladeo National Park in Rajasthan, a famous site.
Used to.
Yeah. The last documented sighting there was back in 2002.
2002, wow, what happened?
Their wetland habitats along the migration route and in Siberia faced huge pressures. Pesticide pollution, drainage for farming, agricultural conversion, some hunting too. It all added up.
Yeah. A really sobering reminder of how quickly even these iconic, well-known populations can just disappear from a place.
It really is. Now, shifting from birds down into the water, let's talk briefly about marine invertebrates. Specifically, fire corals.
Fire corals, are they actual corals?
Interestingly, no. They're actually more closely related to jellyfish and hydroids.
Ah, hence the name. They sting.
Exactly. Contact causes a burning sensation. They can tolerate murkier inshore waters better than some true corals, but they're still very threatened.
Ah.
Global warming-related bleaching is a major one. They're possibly extinct from many marine areas already, potentially including parts of India. It's hard to track sometimes.
It seems like every part of the ecosystem, from the tiniest louse to these corals, is feeling the pressure.
It really does feel that way sometimes.
Speaking of widespread phenomena, maybe we should broaden out a bit and talk about bird migration itself. Why do birds undertake these incredible journeys?
It's this regular, recurrent, cyclical, seasonal movement. Fundamentally, birds migrate for survival and reproduction.
So, escaping harsh conditions.
Right. Avoiding extreme cold or heat, finding enough food and water when local supplies dwindle.
And better places to breed.
Exactly. Finding suitable nesting sites with abundant food for their young. India, of course, is a major crossroads on these migratory flyways.
We get winter visitors.
Yes, like those Siberian cranes we mentioned, greater flamingos, many ducks and waders escaping the northern winter.
And summer visitors, too.
We do. Birds coming from the south or lower altitudes to breed in India during the summer, like the Asian cole or certain cuckoos. It's a constant ebb and flow.
Okay, so we see the pressures on species, the habitat loss. But what about other factors? You mentioned diseases earlier.
Yes, wildlife diseases play a significant, often underestimated role. They can be a major stressor, especially for populations already weakened by other factors.
What kind of diseases are we talking about?
Things like tuberculosis, which can hit deer, big cats, primates, even elephants. Anthrax is another bacterial disease affecting animals like gar and wild pigs. And rabies.
Rabies can affect wildlife, too.
Oh, yes. Tigers, lions, bears, mongoose. It can cause significant mortality and unusual behavior, sometimes leading to increased conflict with humans. These diseases add another layer of complexity to conservation.
That's a powerful point about threats compounding. Maybe you should dive deeper into species extinction itself. What actually causes it?
Broadly, you can think of two main types of processes. There are deterministic processes. These are kind of cause and effect.
Like deforestation caused by humans.
Exactly. That's a direct cause leading towards extinction. Then there are stochastic processes.
Stochastic, meaning?
Random chance events. Unexpectedly severe weather, a sudden disease outbreak, even just random fluctuations in birth or death rates in a small population.
Okay. And what makes some species more vulnerable than others?
Several traits increase vulnerability. Things like natural rarity, just not being very abundant to begin with, poor dispersal ability, not being able to move easily to new areas if their habitat changes.
Being picky eaters, maybe. Ecologically specialized.
That's a big one, yes. If your food source or habitat requirement is very narrow, you're more vulnerable. Also, species with very unstable population sizes, or those higher up the food chain.
Carnivores.
Yeah.
Why them particularly?
Because energy transfer means there are always fewer predators than prey. Their populations are naturally smaller, so any threat habitat loss, prey decline, disease has a much bigger proportional impact. They have less of a buffer.
That makes sense. Fewer individuals to start with.
Precisely. And it's crucial here to distinguish between natural extinctions, the background rate of extinction that's always happened due to things like continental drift, natural climate shifts, volcanic activity.
That's happening now.
And artificial extinctions, which are human-caused. The really stark fact is that human activities have accelerated extinction rates to far, far exceed those natural background estimates.
How? Through direct and indirect means.
Exactly. Direct causes are things like hunting, deliberate persecution, overharvesting. Indirect causes are often even more pervasive: habitat destruction, fragmentation, pollution, introducing invasive species.
Which leads us right into man-animal conflict, doesn't it? When wildlife needs and human needs clash.
Directly. It happens when wildlife and human populations overlap, competing for the same resources, leading to negative impacts on both sides.
What drives this conflict? Human population growth.
That's a major driver, yes.
Yeah.
More people means more land needed for settlements, agriculture, infrastructure, pushing into wildlife habitats, transforming land use patterns.
More livestock, too, competing for grazing.
Yes, increasing livestock populations often leads to competition with wild herbivores and sometimes attracts predators.
Yeah.
Habitat degradation also forces wildlife closer to human areas in search of food or water.
And ironically, sometimes successful conservation can even increase conflict.
It can, yes. If a protected area successfully boosts a wildlife population, like tigers or elephants, but the area around it is heavily populated, the animals might range outside the park, leading to more encounters.
What are the main impacts we see from this conflict?
Well, for people, it's often crop damage, livestock being killed or injured, sometimes, tragically, human injuries or even deaths.
Property damage, too.
And for the animals, injuries or deaths, often in retaliation or through accidental encounters like roadkills. It can also disrupt their social structures and movement patterns. It's a lose-lose situation frequently.
It sounds incredibly complex. So how do we even begin to manage it?
It requires a multi-pronged approach. We can broadly categorize strategies into preventive and mitigative.
Okay, preventive first, stopping it before it happens.
Right. Things like physical barriers, fences, walls, trenches, guarding crops and livestock, especially at night. Using deterrents. Changing farming practices, maybe planting less palatable crops near edges.
What about bigger scale things?
Improved waste management, so animals aren't attracted to garbage. Sometimes, in extreme cases, voluntary human resettlement from critical wildlife corridors. It's about reducing the opportunities for conflict.
And mitigative strategies, dealing with it when it does happen.
Yes. Things like compensation schemes for farmers who lose crops or livestock, insurance programs, promoting community-based natural resource management so local people have a stake in conservation.
What about dealing with specific problem animals?
That can involve translocation moving an animal, though, that has its own challenges. Regulated harvests in some cases, though controversial. And crucially, conservation education and awareness programs for local communities are vital, building tolerance and understanding.
It really shows there's no single magic bullet. It needs a whole suite of approaches.
Absolutely. Okay, shall we shift gears completely now? Let's explore the equally rich world of plant diversity.
Sounds good. Where do we start? Maybe with the basics.
Let's do that. We can start with a simple classification based on general form: herbs, shrubs, and trees.
Okay. Herbs are
Plants with green, tender stems, usually short, less than a meter typically. Think coriander or grass.
Got it. Shrubs.
Woody plants, but they branch right from the base, often have multiple stems, and are generally under, say, 6 meters, like rose bushes or jasmine.
And trees. Pretty obvious, but technically.
Large, woody perennial plants, usually a single, well-defined main stem or trunk, and a distinct crown of branches and leaves higher up, like a mango tree or a banyan.
Simple enough. But within that, plants have some really fascinating ways of living, right? Like parasites.
Oh, absolutely. Parasites are plants that get some or all of their food from another living plant, the host.
Like mistletoe.
Mistletoe is a classic example of a partial parasite. It photosynthesizes, but takes water and minerals from the host. The sandalwood tree is another example in India. It's a partial root parasite.
Sandalwood is a parasite. I didn't know that.
Partially, yes. It needs a host tree, especially when young, to tap into for water and minerals.
Huh.
Then you have total parasites, too, which get everything from the host.
Okay. And what about epiphytes? They grow on other plants too, don't they?
They do, but crucially, they don't take nourishment from the host. They just use the host plant for physical support to get better access to sunlight and air.
Like orchids.
Exactly. Orchids like Xanda are classic epiphytes. They absorb moisture and nutrients directly from the air and rain, often having specialized aerial roots.
So they're just using the tree as a perch, basically.
Pretty much. And of course, you also have climbers, plants that actively climb up supports using tendrils or twining stems to reach sunlight, Lots of different strategies.
It really is an incredible variety.
And just as important as these interactions is how the non-living environment, the abiotic components, affects plants.
Like sunlight.
Light intensity is absolutely critical. Too much light can actually inhibit shoot growth, favoring root growth, and lead to water stress, resulting in shorter, thicker leaves.
And too little light.
That slows down growth overall. It retards flowering, fruiting. The plant becomes weak and spindly, or leggy.
And does the color of light matter?
It does. Photosynthesis primarily uses red and blue wavelengths. Different colors can influence development, too. Blue light tends to promote shorter, stockier plants, while red light can encourage stem elongation. It's quite complex.
Wow. What about cold, frost, and snow?
Frost can be deadly, especially for young plants. It can freeze the water in the soil, making it unavailable, leading to a kind of dehydration, especially when the sun hits the frozen leaves.
It can damage the plant cells, too.
Yes, ice crystals forming inside cells can rupture them. Repeated frost can lead to cankers, these sort of dead patches, on trees.
And snow. Is it protective or damaging?
Both, actually. A layer of snow can act like an insulating blanket, protecting plants underneath from extreme cold and wind. But heavy snow can physically break branches, bend stems, and even uproot entire trees due to the sheer weight.
Right. And extreme heat.
Excessive temperature can be lethal. It disrupts cell function, can cook the plant's tissues, and critically, it affects the balance between respiration and photosynthesis. High heat increases respiration, using up the plant's stored food faster, making it more vulnerable to disease.
Is that related to something called dieback?
It can be one cause, yes. Dieback is this interesting adaptive mechanism where the shoots of a plant progressively die, starting from the tip and moving downwards, while the roots often stay alive.
Why would a plant do that?
It's a survival strategy. It can happen due to various stresses, inadequate light, drought, extreme temperatures, heavy grazing, disease. The plant essentially retreats, conserving resources in its roots, hoping to regrow when conditions improve.
Fascinating. Okay, here's a category I find really intriguing. Insectivorous plants. Plants that eat insects.
Yes. Carnivorous plants. It seems counterintuitive, doesn't it? They have normal roots, green leaves, they photosynthesize.
So why hunt?
The key is where they live. They typically thrive in really specific environments, nutrient-poor soils, often waterlogged, boggy, acidic, ill-drained places.
Like peat bogs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In these soils, the normal microorganisms that decompose dead organic matter and release nutrients, especially nitrogen, can't survive well.
Ah, so the plants can make their own sugars through photosynthesis, but they lack essential nutrients.
Precisely. They lack nitrogen and sometimes phosphorus. So they've evolved to supplement their diet by trapping and digesting insects to get those vital nutrients.
Clever. How do they trap them?
A variety of ingenious mechanisms. Some are active traps, involving rapid movement. Others are passive traps, more like pitfalls.
Okay, give me an example of an active one.
The Venus flytrap is the most famous, though not native to India. A similar one found here is Aldrovanda, the water wheel plant. It has leaves that snap shut quickly when trigger hairs are touched.
And passive traps, like pitcher plants.
Exactly. Nepenthes, the pitcher plants found in India, have modified leaves that form these pitfall traps. Insects are lured in, often by nectar.
Then they slip.
They slip on the slick inner surface and fall into a pool of digestive enzymes at the bottom. Grim, but effective.
How do they lure the insects in the first place?
Often with bright colors, enticing patterns, or sweet secretions like nectar mimicking flowers.
So what specific examples do we find in India?
We have quite a few. There's Drosera, the sundew. Its leaves are covered in these stalks, tipped with sticky, glistening droplets, like dew.
And insects get stuck.
They get stuck, and then the tentacles slowly curl inwards, bringing the insect into contact with digestive glands. We already mentioned Aldrovanda and Nepenthes.
Any others?
Yes, Utricularia, the bladderworts. These are often aquatic or grow in wet soil. They have tiny bladders with trapdoors.
Trapdoors.
Yes, with sensitive bristles. When a tiny aquatic creature touches the bristles, the trapdoor springs open, water rushes in carrying the prey, and the door snaps shut, all in milliseconds.
That's incredible. Like tiny vacuum cleaners?
Sort of. And then there's Pinguicula, or butterwort. Its leaves are covered in sticky glands, so the entire leaf surface acts like flypaper.
Amazing diversity in trapping strategies. Do these plants have any other uses?
Surprisingly, some have traditional medicinal uses. Drosera juice, for example, has been used to curdle milk or treat certain ailments. Nepenthes pitcher fluid has been used locally, sometimes misguidedly for things like cholera, though caution is needed, obviously.
Right. But these unique plants must be facing threats too.
They are, significantly. Because they're so fascinating, they're collected for ornamental horticulture and sometimes for the trade in medicinal plants.
And habitat destruction, given their specific needs.
That's the biggest threat. Draining wetlands, converting bogs for agriculture development destroys their habitat. And pollution is a major issue, too.
Pollution? How?
They're adapted to nutrient-poor environments, runoff containing fertilizers, detergents, sewage. This high level of nutrients is actually toxic to them. They just can't handle it.
So the very thing they lack in the soil becomes a poison when there's too much.
Exactly. It's a delicate balance.
This brings us neatly to another big issue, invasive alien species. Plants and animals that don't belong.
A huge global problem, and India is certainly affected. These are species introduced, intentionally or accidentally, outside their natural range.
And the invasive part means they cause harm.
Precisely. They spread aggressively and negatively impact native biodiversity, ecosystem function, or even the economy or human health. The key is often that they arrive without their natural predators, diseases, or competitors that kept them in check back home.
So they can just run wild, acting as competitors, predators,
pathogens, parasites. They can disrupt ecosystems in many ways.
What's the overall effect on biodiversity? Does it just add more species?
Initially, when an alien species arrives, it might seem like species richness increases, you just added one more, but the long-term effect is almost always negative.
How so?
The invasive species outcompetes native species for resources like light, water, nutrients, or space, or it preys on them directly, or introduces new diseases. This leads to declines in native populations and ultimately extinctions, causing a net loss of biodiversity.
Can you give some examples of invasive animals in India?
Sure. There's a tiny gall-forming wasp, Leptocybin vasa, that attacks eucalyptus plantations. The giant African snail is a major agricultural pest. Even some birds, like the common myna, can become invasive outside their native range, competing with local birds. And things like goldfish released into natural waters.
Right. And invasive plants are a huge issue too, I imagine.
Absolutely. India has a long list of invasive alien flora. Plants like needlebush, Procopus chiliflora or mesquite, black wattle, goatweed.
Water hyacinth must be one of the most visible.
Definitely. Icornia crassipes. It completely chokes waterways, blocking sunlight, reducing oxygen, hindering boat traffic.
Yeah.
A massive problem.
Lantana, too. Those colorful bushes you see everywhere.
Lantana camera, yes. Extremely aggressive, forms dense thickets, suppresses native vegetation. Then there's Parthenium hysterophorus, often called Congress grass.
Ah, yes. That causes allergies too, doesn't it?
It does. Severe allergies and respiratory problems. And it rapidly colonizes disturbed land, roadsides, agricultural fields, outcompeting crops and native plants. These invasives are incredibly resilient and widespread.
A really difficult challenge to manage once they're established.
Extremely difficult. Prevention is always better than cure with invasives.
Okay, shifting focus again. Let's talk about something more traditionally valued. The incredible medicinal plants of India.
A truly rich heritage. India has used plants for medicine for millennia, documented in ancient texts like the Ayurveda. This traditional knowledge is immense.
Can you highlight some specific examples and their uses?
Certainly. Let's take Sarpaganda, or Indian snakeroot, Ravolfia serpentina. Its roots contain alkaloids, most famously reserpine.
Reserpine? What's that used for?
It was one of the first major drugs for lowering high blood pressure and also used as a sedative for certain central nervous system disorders like anxiety or psychosis. Huge medicinal value, but needs careful use.
Wow. What about others, like Bedum cycad? You mentioned cycads earlier.
Yes, Cycas bedamae. It's endemic to a small area in the eastern Ghats. Traditionally, parts of its male cone have been used by local herbalists to treat things like rheumatoid arthritis and muscle pains. Again, demonstrating that link between specific plants and traditional remedies.
And orchids, like blue vanda or lady slipper orchid.
The blue vanda, Vanda caerulea, is highly valued in horticulture for its stunning blue flowers, used to create hybrids. Lady slipper orchids, Paphiopedilum species, though some Cypripedium are also called this, have some traditional uses, maybe for anxiety or pain, but they are primarily threatened by collection for the ornamental trade.
What about couth, Sosteria costus?
Couth, found in the Himalayas. Its roots contain essential oils and an alkaloid called sosterine. It has anti-inflammatory properties used in traditional Tibetan medicine. in perfumes, as incense, even as an insecticide to protect textiles. Very versatile.
So many uses. What about red vanda or cerepegia?
Red vanda, Renanthera imscuciana, is another beautiful orchid, again threatened by collection. Cerepegia species are interesting succulent climbers, often with unusual lantern-shaped flowers. Some are grown as ornamentals, and some have local food or medicinal uses, but many are threatened.
There's also emodi, or Indian podophyllum.
Podophyllum hexandrum. The rhizomes and roots form a drug called podophyllin. It contains cytotoxic lignans used topically to treat warts, but it's toxic if ingested and a strong irritant. Needs very careful handling.
And tree ferns. Are they used medicinally?
Some tree ferns, Cyathea species, have traditional uses, but perhaps more significantly, the starchy pith from their stems has been used as a food source in some areas during famines.
We mentioned cycads again. They're living fossils, right?
They are ancient plants. Besides Bedham's cycad, other cycads are also sources of starch, sago, but processing is crucial because they contain toxins, including one linked to a neurological disease if consumed improperly over long periods.
Flex plants. And elephant's foot. Dioscorea deltoidea.
That's a species of yam. Its tubers are a source of diosgenin.
Diosgenin, what's that used for?
It's a precursor chemical used in the pharmaceutical industry to synthesize steroid hormones like progesterone, cortisone. So it's been commercially very important.
It's amazing how much chemistry is locked up in these plants.
It truly is. Nature's pharmacy.
Okay, let's zoom out a bit now and look at tree characteristics more generally. How do we classify trees ecologically?
One fundamental distinction is between deciduous and evergreen trees.
Deciduous means they lose their leaves.
Yes, they shed all their leaves seasonally, usually in response to cold, autumn, or a dry season, to conserve water or energy. Think maple trees or teak.
And evergreen.
Evergreen trees always have some foliage. They do shed old leaves, but gradually, not all at once, so they appear green year-round, like pine trees or mango trees.
Got it. Now let's really break down a tree. You mentioned the trunk, crown, roots earlier. Can we dive into the parts of a tree?
Absolutely. Let's start underground with the roots. Their main jobs are anchoring the tree firmly in the ground, absorbing water and essential mineral nutrients from the soil, and often storing food reserves, like starch.
Then above ground, the main structure is the trunk and the crown.
Right. The crown is the top part, the branches and leaves. It's where photosynthesis happens, it provides shade which can benefit the roots, and it's where transpiration, water release, occurs, helping pull water up from the roots.
And the leaves themselves.
They're the tree's food factories. They contain chlorophyll, the green pigment that captures sunlight energy. They use this energy to convert carbon dioxide from the air and water from the soil into sugars, the tree's food releasing oxygen as a byproduct.
Essential for us. What about branches?
Branches support the leaves, positioning them to capture sunlight. They also act as conduits, transporting water and nutrients up from the trunk and sugars down from the leaves, and they can store sugars too.
And the trunk. It's more than just support, right?
Much more. It gives the tree its basic shape and height, supports the massive weight of the crown, and it's the main highway for transporting water and nutrients up and sugars down between the roots and leaves.
If you were to look inside the trunk, what would you see? Those rings.
Yes, the annual rings. Each ring usually represents 1 year's growth, a wider, lighter part for rapid spring-summer growth, and a narrower, darker part for slower autumn-winter growth.
So you can tell a tree's age.
You can estimate its age, yes. And scientists, paleoclimatologists, use ring patterns, their width, density from old trees or preserved wood to reconstruct past climate conditions. It's fascinating.
What else is inside the trunk? Bark.
Right on the outside is the bark. It's the tree's protective layer, shielding it from insects, disease, fire, and physical damage. The inner bark, called the phloem, is alive and transports sugars produced in the leaves downwards. The outer bark is mostly dead cells.
And things like latex or cinnamon come from bark?
Yes, many useful products. Just beneath the bark is a very thin layer called the cambium.
Cambium? What does that do?
It's the growth layer. Its cells divide to produce new xylem wood cells on the inside and new phloem inner bark cells on the outside. This is what allows the trunk and branches to grow thicker each year.
Okay. Inside the cambium is the wood.
Yes. The outer living wood is called the sapwood, or xylem. Its main job is transporting water and dissolved minerals up from the roots to the leaves. It's usually lighter in color.
And the wood in the very center.
That's the heartwood. It's essentially dead sapwood. As the tree grows, the older inner sapwood becomes clogged with resins and minerals, stops transporting water, and becomes much harder and often darker.
So it's mainly for support.
Exactly. It provides the central strength and rigidity to the trunk. And right at the very center of the trunk, in young stems, you might find the pith.
Pith.
It's soft, spongy tissue, originally involved in transporting nutrients when the stem was very young. In older trees, it's often quite small or compressed.
That's a lot going on inside a trunk. What about the roots? Are they all the same?
Not at all. There's huge diversity in root types. Many trees start with a main taproot that grows straight down, with smaller lateral roots branching off.
But sometimes you see roots above ground.
Yes. Those are called adventitious roots, roots that arise from places other than the main root system, like stems or leaves. There are many types.
Like those huge plank-like roots on some big trees.
Buttress roots, yes. Found on large trees, especially in the tropics, like the silk cotton tree. They flare out from the base of the trunk, providing extra stability in shallow soils.
And banyan trees have roots hanging from branches.
Those are prop roots. They grow down from the branches, enter the soil, and become thick and pillar-like, supporting the heavy branches and effectively creating new trunks.
What about mangroves? They live in water.
Mangroves often have stilt roots, which arch out from the lower trunk and prop the tree up above the water level, providing stability in soft mud. And some swamp trees have pneumatophores.
Pneumatophores. Air roots.
Literally breathing roots. They grow upwards from the main roots, sticking out of the waterlogged, oxygen-poor mud, and have pores to allow the root system to get oxygen from the air.
Amazing adaptation. Any other special root types?
We mentioned hostorial roots earlier. Those are the specialized roots of parasitic plants that penetrate the host tissue. And many plants have storage roots, thickened roots modified to store food, like carrots or beets, though those are herbs, the principle applies.
And I've heard of mycorrhiza. Is that a root type?
Not exactly a root type, but a crucial symbiotic association between fungal hyphae and plant roots. The fungus helps the plant absorb water and nutrients, especially phosphorus, and the plant provides sugars to the fungus. Most trees depend on these partnerships.
So much complexity, even in the roots.
Absolutely. And we could go even further into canopy classification or other traits like phenology, the timing of life cycle events like leafing, flowering, fruiting.
Or etiolation, what's that?
That's when a plant grows in very low light. It becomes pale yellow with long, weak stems as it stretches desperately towards any available light.
Okay, and autumn tints. That's just leaves dying.
It's a bit more complex. As chlorophyll breaks down in deciduous leaves before they fall, other pigments, yellows, carotenoids, and reds, anthocyanins, that were masked by the green become visible, creating those beautiful colors.
What about tree shape, like taper?
Taper is the gradual decrease in the diameter of the trunk from the base upwards. It's partly a structural adaptation to withstand wind pressure, which is strongest at the base.
And that bamboo flowering you mentioned, gregarious flowering.
Yes, it's fascinating and still not fully understood. Many bamboo species flower simultaneously over vast areas, often after decades of vegetative growth, produce seeds, and then the parent plants die.
Why would they do that?
Theories include predator satiation, producing so many seeds at once that predators can't eat them all, or maybe it's triggered by environmental cues or an internal clock. It's a biological puzzle.
In quick mentions, the sal tree has specific distribution needs, and the sandal tree is a partial parasite.
Yes, Sal Shuria robusta is a dominant tree in parts of India, but notably absent from the Deccan Traps region, likely due to soil preferences. And yes, we confirm sandalwood is a partial root parasite. It all shows how specific and adapted trees are.
Incredible detail. Okay, let's take our final plunge now into the marine realm. Marine organisms. Where do we start in the ocean?
Let's begin with the foundation. Plankton. These are the vast communities of organisms that drift or float in the water, unable to swim strongly against currents, especially in the surface layers.
And there are two main types, right?
Correct. Phytoplankton, which are the plant-like components, microscopic algae, bacteria, protists, single-celled plants, and zooplankton, which are the animal components, tiny animals, or the larval stages of larger ones.
And phytoplankton are super important.
Incredibly so. They are the primary producers of the ocean. Through photosynthesis, they generate a huge amount of the world's oxygen estimates range, but often over 60% of oxygen from all plants, land, and sea combined.
60%, that's staggering.
It is. And they form the absolute base of almost all aquatic food webs. Everything else ultimately depends on them.
You also mentioned their role in carbon dioxide transfer earlier, the biological carbon pump.
Yes. Phytoplankton absorb CO2 from the atmosphere for photosynthesis. When they die, or are eaten, that carbon sinks down into the deeper ocean. This process transfers about 10 gigatons of carbon from the atmosphere to the deep ocean every year.
10 gigatons. So small changes in phytoplankton could affect the global climate.
Significantly, yes. They are a major player in the global carbon cycle and climate regulation.
What controls how much phytoplankton there is?
Several factors. Light is crucial, so they're mostly in the upper sunlit layers. Nutrients are key, especially nitrogen, phosphorus, silicate for diatoms, and trace amounts of iron. Temperature and salinity also play roles.
And things eating them.
Absolutely. Grazing by zooplankton is a major control on phytoplankton populations. Their distribution varies to generally highest in high latitudes and upwelling zones where nutrients are abundant, and lower in the clear, nutrient-poor waters of the tropics. UVB radiation can also inhibit growth in some areas.
Okay. And the zooplankton, what's their role besides eating phytoplankton?
They're a vital link in the food web, transferring energy from phytoplankton up to larger animals like fish. They also play a role in nutrient recycling, excreting nutrients back into the water. And their abundance is often a key indicator for determining potential fish stocks.
And they're more abundant in mangrove areas.
Often, yes. Mangrove waterways can be very rich in nutrients and detritus, supporting large zooplankton populations.
Right, moving from drifting life to rooted life in the sea. Seagrass, these are actual flowering plants, not seaweed.
Correct. They are true flowering plants, angiosperms, that have adapted to live fully submerged in marine environments. They look like terrestrial grass, with leaves, stems, and roots.
Where do they grow?
Typically in shallow, sheltered coastal waters with sandy or muddy bottoms where sunlight can reach them. They form extensive underwater meadows.
And where in India would we find these meadows?
Major seagrass beds are found along the southeast coast, particularly Tamil Nadu and the Gulf of Mannar and Palk Bay. Also in the lagoons of Lakshadweep and around the Andaman and Nicobar Islands.
What do these seagrass beds actually do for the ecosystem?
Their functions are incredibly important. Physically, their leaves baffle waves energy, protecting coastlines. Their roots and rhizomes bind sediments, stabilizing the seabed and reducing erosion. They filter suspended particles, improving water clarity.
And provide habitat?
Crucially, yes. They provide vital habitat, food, and nursery grounds for a huge diversity of marine life fish, invertebrates like shrimp and crabs, sea turtles.
And dugongs. You mentioned dugongs eat them.
Yes, seagrass meadows are the primary food source for the vulnerable dugong. Seagrass beds also act as nutrient sinks, trapping nutrients from runoff. They are incredibly productive ecosystems.
But they must be under threat, too.
They are, significantly. Threats include eutrophication, excess nutrients from pollution, causing algal blooms that block light. Siltation from coastal development or dredging smothers them. Destructive fishing practices like bottom trawling tear them up. Coastal construction directly destroys them. And overexploitation of the resources within the meadows.
So what can be done? Management strategies.
Careful mapping and monitoring of seagrass beds is essential for identifying areas needing protection. Coastal zone management needs to strictly regulate activities like dredging, construction, and pollution discharge near these sensitive areas. Promoting sustainable fishing practices is also key.
Okay, finally let's talk about seaweeds. How are they different from seagrass?
Seaweeds are algae. They are simpler plants, technically macroscopic algae, meaning they are large enough to see without a microscope. Unlike seagrass, they don't have true roots, stems, leaves, or flowers.
How do they stay put then?
They typically attach themselves to hard surfaces, like rocks, corals, or shells, using a structure called a holdfast, which anchors them but doesn't absorb nutrients like roots do. They absorb nutrients directly from the surrounding water through their blades or fronds.
And they come in different colors.
Yes, they are broadly classified based on their dominant pigments. Chlorophyta, green algae, Phaeophyta, brown algae like kelps, and Rhodophyta, red algae.
What are the functions of seaweeds in the ocean?
Similar to seagrass in some ways. They provide food and habitat for many marine animals. Large kelp forests are incredibly important ecosystems. They also contribute to sediment formation when they break down.
And humans use them quite a lot, don't they?
Extensively. Seaweeds have diverse uses. Many are eaten directly as human food, especially in East Asia. Think nori for sushi. They're used as animal feed and fertilizers due to their rich mineral content.
Medicinal uses, too.
Yes. Traditionally used for things like treating goiter, because many are rich in iodine. Also for intestinal disorders. Commercially, valuable products are extracted.
Like agar-agar.
Exactly. Agar, and carrageenan from red algae, and alginates from brown algae are widely used as gelling agents, thickeners and stabilizers in food, cosmetics, pharmaceuticals, and biotechnology. Iodine is also commercially extracted.
And they can indicate pollution.
Some seaweeds are known to accumulate heavy metals from the water, so their tissues can potentially be analyzed to monitor pollution levels in coastal areas.
But there can be downsides too. Rotting seaweed.
Yes, that's an important point.
Yeah.
When large amounts of seaweed wash ashore and decay, especially certain types under anaerobic conditions, they can release highly toxic hydrogen sulfide gas. This has caused serious health problems, even fatalities, in areas with massive seaweed beaching events.
So too much of a good thing can be bad. Are seaweeds facing similar threats to seagrass?
Generally, yes. Pollution, habitat destruction from coastal development, overharvesting in some areas, and the impacts of climate change like rising sea temperatures can all negatively affect seaweed populations.
Wow. What an incredible, complex journey we've had through India's biodiversity. From tiny parasites to giant trees and ocean ecosystems, we've really seen that delicate balance, haven't we? Between species, their habitats, and all these pressures.
Absolutely. And what really stands out, I think, is the profound interconnectedness of it all. How the fate of the tiniest pygmy hog, or the specific light needs of a plant, or the abundance of plankton, how it all ripples through the entire system.
Yeah, it really makes you think.
It does, and maybe it leads to a question for you, the listener. We've heard how seemingly simple factors, things like dry season burning or fuel wood collection, can critically endanger a species. So what seemingly small actions or choices in our own lives might have significant, maybe unseen impacts on biodiversity, either locally or even globally.
That's a challenging thought. And how does understanding all this, the unique adaptations, the hidden lives, the specific threats, especially for species found only in India, how does that broaden our sense of responsibility towards conservation, not just locally, but globally? Maybe you'll look at a patch of grassland or a coastline or even a city tree with new eyes now.
Perhaps.
So maybe the final thought for you is, what single small piece of this incredible biodiversity puzzle, maybe a plant, an animal, an ecosystem we touched on, might you choose to learn even more about after this deep dive? Thank you for joining us on this exploration of the rich, complex, and truly vital tapestry of life in India.